G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. We're down here at Docklands at around 11:30 p.m. There's a little bit of rain falling and we are currently shooting with the brand new 85mm 1.4 native Z mount lens from Viltrox. And as we can see, it is creating a fantastic image. We're currently shooting at 1/50th of a second at 1.4 at ISO 400, and it's working perfectly well. I'm here by myself. I don't have an operator making sure that this is all working. Also, I don't have anybody watching my back, which, you know, that's just a thing when you go and shoot at night. We're currently shooting on the Z6III. I've also been shooting with this lens on the fantastic ZR with my awesome setup here with the MCN10. This is designated one of Viltrox's pro lenses. This is just below the lab lenses. Now, of course, there is no 85mm 1.4 Z mount lens from Nikon. We were expecting it last year when the 35 and the 50mm 1.4 came out, but it has not materialized. Now, there's lots of speculation as to whether Viltrox is official or whether they're reverse engineering. Well, there's a couple of things that I can tell you about this lens using it so far. Number one, the very first thing that I've seen is that the image stabilization on this lens is superb, and it is up there very close, if not the same as native Nikon Z mount lenses. Superb stabilization in both video and stills. Secondly, I don't see any focus breathing whatsoever. Thirdly, it's very sharp. Fourth, there doesn't seem to be any chromatic aberration or purple fringing. I'm happy to say that the focus limiter is working on this new Viltrox lens. I've set it to 55 meters. That's it. That is 55 meters. At the same time, we can get a great look at the Bokeh Balls. There they are there. And they are looking absolutely spectacular. We're shooting handheld, 1/50th f1.4 ISO 800 on the Z6III. Again, very impressed by that stabilization. And thus, this lens is looking like a great option. 85mm, traditionally known by some as a portrait lens. Obviously, you can use lenses for all sorts of different things. As you'll know, I will always give you cityscapes, nightscapes, dayscapes. A lot of people shoot scapes, whether it's on a holiday or in their local town. The first thing I want to say about the Viltrox 1.4 is how much I like this lens. There we are, the 85 1.4 on the ZR. And if you've wondered whether the ZR can be a great stills camera, well, here is the beginning of that story. You're going to see a lot of fantastic stills created with the ZR, which is just a pleasure to shoot with, to be honest. It's a different way of shooting. It's got that enormous screen. It creates the potential for different opportunities. We are shooting high efficiency star with all of these images. I've made a few adjustments in this image to get you this outcome. What this is about is saying that you can take a landscape and you can create the sense of depth of field by having short depth of field. The focus is here in the middle ground, the foreground is out of focus, and the background is slightly soft as well. We are at 1/10,000th of a second f1.4 at 100 ISO. Same sort of image again. This time I've actually gotten it straight, which is fantastic. Look, I love this type of image. I think it looks moody and we've got a lot of control in here. And if we took this out to some other black and white specific editors, this image would look even more fantastic. And real world application using the ZR, and if we talk about dynamic range, well, I love what this is capable of. We can bring it down and have those highlight areas just looking fantastic. Bring it back to the 0 point, which is here. Great. Something I quite like playing with black and white is when you drop the contrast and you get this sort of look. There is a little bit of vignetting going on. It doesn't bother me. This image is for sharpness. We're shooting at 1/3200th of a second, 1.4 ISO 100 handheld ZR and the Viltrox 85 1.4. This is near the corner, and I would say that's looking pretty damn sharp for the corner of a 1.4 85mm lens. That little corner down there in the bottom right might not be as perfectly sharp, but to be honest, I also might not be 100% square on. The sharpness coverage looks pretty broad from my perspective and more than you need on this sort of lens. And of course, portraiture, well, your subject is going to be not here on the edges, and this is looking sharp even quite here, but they're going to be right here in the middle where it's looking absolutely fantastic. That is a very silky smooth transition. I think it's looking absolutely fantastic in the background. It's not fussy, it's not busy, it's really, really smooth. Now, this is again about bokeh, and if you look at the top of the frame, you might miss it when you first see this image. This is what's in focus, and if we look at these leaves right here, this is pixel for pixel. This is absolutely sharp, and we are right at the top of the frame, and now we're heading towards the corner. f1.4 at 1,000th of a shutter, ISO 100 on the ZR. Pixel for pixel, this is the corner. Nice and sharp. No question there. I think that's doing an absolutely fabulous job. And yes, we're in the other corner over here, and I would say that is sharp as well. That beautiful creamy background bokeh, as well as look how sharp this is up in the corner here. And that is an absolutely fantastic result for sharpness. Pixel for pixel. This lens is killing it. Do we see a little bit of Loca here? Well, yes, maybe ever so slightly, but we've got a pixel peep to see it. We'll keep looking out for it. This is just a classic black and white, high contrast sort of image. Shooting it for sharpness, there's going to be no problems when we're here at f8. No real sign of vignetting, of course, by the time we get to f8. Sharpness, I really like this sort of image. I think it's quite powerful. Something that I'm finding interesting, you know, I've shot black and white film for years and years. I actually think this lens sits somewhere between the ultra brilliance that we find with the 85S lenses and the traditional f-mount lenses. This is far closer to the S lenses, but there is something about the rendition here which feels to, let's say, a little bit softer, but still sharp, if that makes any sense. And it's probably to do with the contrast of the lens and the flare suppression. Much the same image, but in color. And we can see here how it is handling, aberrating, and so on. We're still at f8. This is 1/16,000th of a second. So this is how bright it is, that I need to be at 1/16,000th of a second at f8 just to bring that sky under control. And I have brought that up half a stop. This time we're at 1/16,000 at f16. Would you believe that diffraction does actually occur on a 24 megapixel sensor? Somewhere around the f11 mark. So we are getting into diffraction zone here, and I do think we are probably losing just a smidge of sharpness. But there's the lens handling flare, just to show you what the sun will look like at f16. 3.2, also trying to test out, just pushing it, looking into the sun, looking what it will do in regards to fringing. I don't really see any here. We're not wide open. It would just be too bright. 1/16,000th of a second at f3.2, so we're still pretty wide. But just have a look at the background there, how sharp all of this infrastructure here is in the background. Some night images, 1/4 of a second handheld. I don't think we've quite gotten away with it. There is pixel for pixel. It's very close. A clear look at the Bokeh Balls on the Viltrox 85 1.4. Can see there's a little bit of lemon shapes towards the edges. Otherwise, I think they look pretty clean. Yet again, I will repeat, there is no bokeh that I don't really like. I like all types of bokeh. Depending on where your focus is at, they change, and you can see that in the video component. One thing I just want to touch on, which you might have missed in the earlier section, is that the focus limiter that's now being rolled out via firmware to various different cameras does work. It's in the Z6III and the Z8. The focus limiter works, which is fantastic because this is a third-party lens. 1/4 of a second, 1.4, ISO 100. Now, because this object is closer compared to those buildings, there is a larger tolerance for the image to basically have the appearance of not getting camera shake. But we can clearly see here that some of these twigs look sharp. 1/4 of a second handheld on an 85mm lens. And I've removed a little bit of color, but there it is normal. And can we see a little bit of Loca here? Maybe the slightest amount, but geez, it's really not very obvious. I think this is a pretty good result. There is the absolute hint of it, but it is not distracting, and it's not going to be a problem. And let's keep in mind, when we go in for pixel, this is actually how the image will be rendered. Now, this is 1/4 of a second again. Maybe I tried a little bit harder, but this, I would say, is very, very close. The city's a long way away. Now this is half a second handheld. I do think there is the smallest amount of camera shake. We can see some raindrops. I've really pushed this file very, very hard. Maybe somewhere between 2 and 3 stops, this is being pushed down the bottom here. So not perfectly sharp at half a second, but still quite an interesting result when you consider the fact that this area here has no illumination. This is basically just the ambient light that's bouncing around, and it looks more like this to the eye. Something in that area there. I mean, what a result that you can still actually capture something. It also gives us a bit of a sense of what distant bokeh looks like. This shot is actually taken in the reflection of a shop across the road. The rendition is still very, very sharp. 1/25th of a second, ISO 100, 1.4, handheld. Here was a cafe just down the road, and I was looking at this for purple fringing. It's just the absolutely tiniest amount of Loca there, just tiny, tiny. So tiny it's not worth mentioning because that's pixel for pixel now. But purple fringing is being absolutely managed. I'm photographing it through the shop window, which is why it's a little bit lower in contrast. Love the background bokeh. Love how it's handling the Loca and fringing. Well, that's a spectacular result when you consider the price point of this lens. With other lenses, you'd just expect this to be an absolutely purple nightmare. There is nothing there, and I have not engaged the defringe option here on Capture One. It's a really strong result in both the Loca and purple fringing, showing off more of that 1.4 depth of field and how that background is amazing. I do think this is a very cinematic lens, and it would be a great option for people trying to achieve a cinematic outcome on a camera like the ZR, which is a Z cinema camera. Works well, it's not very heavy, it's affordable, and you get a look like this, and you can shoot at nighttime. This, for example, is base ISO at 1/15th of a second, handheld at 1.4. We would expect areas like this to be exploding with all sorts of things that we don't like, handled. Looking at the detail and the rendition, pixel for pixel, high efficiency star, these files are about 60% of the size of Nikon's highest quality files, still give you a raw image, fully flexible. Like this file is only something like 17 megabytes, 18 megabytes, somewhere in this size. It's very small for the amount of information that's here. The fact that it's fully adjustable, I think the results speak for themselves. Smallest amount of green, that is a tremendous result in such a harsh situation. That beautiful creamy out of focus area, just love it. There was one specific type of light, I don't know what they are. They were creating this type of flare. You can see it here right in the center of a frame. If we go back to here, these lights, not doing it, not creating the same sort of flare. There is a tiny amount of ghosting going on there, just the tiniest amount, but it's nothing like what we're seeing here. It was only these lights? Because we can see in the background here, it wasn't the same. I'm not sure what that is. I don't think it's something that needs to be worried about because it was literally just in this location. This is the same location and they are more of those lights. So just that light there, but not any of the other light sources. This is a very interesting, very powerful lens. I think for the price point, it's very, very compelling. It is a pro level lens. It's called a pro level lens. It does have weather sealing. And if we talk about build, it has a click and declick for the aperture. Autofocus, manual focus, has a focus ring, nicely built, feels great in the hand. It does come for some other mounts as well. I think if you are in the market for an 85mm and 1.4 happens to be your absolute sweet spot, then you kind of can't go wrong with this lens. There is one thing that Viltrox is doing, which I think is to do with the way they are doing the focus motors, is that you can sometimes, when you move the lens around, hear a little gentle clunk. And I think that's because the element in there is free to move. I didn't really notice it with the 135 lab lens, but other users and friends have told me that there is a similar clunk. I'm hard pressed to think that Viltrox would allow this if it was to be an issue. They don't want lenses returned. My guess is it's okay. And we've also seen Nikon do this with some of their in-body image stabilisation units in, say, for example, the ZR here and in the ZF. Those units are not locked down. You can hear that little clunk in there, although that might have been this lens as well. Cameras have clunks, little gentle clunks where parts are moving. Is this a problem? Look, I don't know, but so far all of my cameras and all of my lenses that have these minor clunks, they go super fine. If you think about it, your shutter mechanism clunks and it might clunk 200, 300, 500, And in the case of really high-end cameras, maybe something like 1 million actuations. Maybe it's no different than that. Maybe they're absolutely dampened, so it simply is not an issue at all. Otherwise, I see this lens as a fantastic option. And the only other thing that I'd like to touch on is, yes, Nikon does not have the 85 1.4 natively as a Nikon lens. Of course, we have the 85 1.2, which is one of the most exciting lenses I've ever seen. And of course, we have another really interesting lens, which is more expensive than the one we're shooting on right now, which is the 85 1.8S. Now that lens still sits in the top 10 sharpest lenses ever, as designated by DxO Mark. That's a fabulous lens. I've had it since the start of the Z mount 2019. I've used it a lot. I often take it away with me. It's small, it's light, it's relatively affordable. That's a contender in all of this, but you might want that 1.4, which gives you a little bit more light gathering. You might want that smidge more depth of field, although you could take just a very small step closer, and that will create a similar sort of illusion.
Also, you may prefer the switching gear that comes with the Viltrox lens, which includes a clickable and declickable aperture and a function button. Neither of these attributes come with the Nikon lens.
This lens renders differently than the 85 1.8. Now I will do a comparison because there are so many 85s now available for the Z mount. It'd be something like 7, might even go to 10. This is something I'll do in a follow-up video. You should check out though my video when the 85 1.2 came out. I did test 3 or 4 85 lenses, an earlier Viltrox one, the original 85 1.4 F mount and the 1.2. That's a good video. This new one that we're shooting on now, that is going to throw a little bit of the cat amongst the pigeons. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to continue to shoot with the ZR and the 85mm 1.4 Pro from Viltrox. Now, if you're interested in purchasing this lens, please do consider using the affiliate links below. Costs you nothing extra and really does help support the channel. There is a discount code as well. Of course, more important than what I think, what do you think about this new lens from Viltrox? Please do let me know in the comments below. All right, everybody, it has been so good to see you, and if this is your first time here, I would love to see you again, so please do subscribe, please share, and please like. All right, bye for now.